What's up everyone? Alex here. In between lengthy JRPGs, I'm always looking for a game that can serve as a palate cleanser. Thankfully, Tetris Effect Connected, a multiplayer-enabled version of the popular Tetris Effect released a few years ago, is finally out on all platforms, with a Switch version releasing later this year, and I want to give you all my impressions of playing the connected mode of the game. Tetris Effect is unlike any Tetris game you've ever played before, combining great visuals, sound, and music into an experience that everyone, including lapsed players, will enjoy. If you want more of my thoughts on it, I highly recommend checking out my review of the game linked in the description and in the card shown. For the uninitiated, Connected is a 3-player online cross-platform co-op mode, that's a mouthful, that puts your group against a parade of AI bosses named after signs of the zodiac. In this mode, each player gets individual boards, and you're gonna be making lines as you normally do in Tetris, slowly building up a meter around your player avatar. What separates Connected mode from any other Tetris mode, however, is that you'll be fighting against an AI that will throw occasional challenges at you that'll make making lines even harder. These attacks can manipulate the board in many different ways, and it's up to you to adapt them. Personally, I don't consider myself as a pro Tetris player at all, but what's actually really interesting is that it does force you to think about Tetris in a very different way because all of these wrenches are different each time. If you played any sort of multiplayer Tetris game before, a lot of those have something to do with either lifting up the bottom of the board, and that's still there, but there's obstacles like making a giant Tetramino block drop from the top of the screen that is very intimidating when you first see it. All in all, I think different bosses in the different difficulty levels do challenge you in a variety of creative ways, and you're not forced into the harder difficulties if you don't want to. Another thing that makes this mode difficult is the fact that the boards are free to move however they want, and this is like really insane. In later difficulties, they move so much that I'm even afraid that somebody might get motion sickness just by looking at these. However, given that it's a 2D surface moving against a flat background, I'm not really sure if that's going to happen. But I will warn you guys again and say that in harder difficulties, my goodness, that thing moves around a lot. In the event that a player fails, they'll have the option to revive themselves. This is kind of tricky because the game doesn't actually tell you how to revive yourself, but I have the info right here. In order to do this, on your icon, you'll see a circle shrink repeatedly. If you manage to press the X button on the PlayStation, when the circle is at its smallest, in time with the beat of the song, you'll be able to fill up the color that's building up on your board. Once you fill it up, you're back in. Alternately, and perhaps a bit more slowly, is that other players can help build this up by clearing 4 lines, a Tetris, repeatedly. I think the revive mechanic should have been explicitly explained in the game itself, because what a lot of people are doing is, because of the frustration of not being able to figure out how revive works, they're all quitting the matches midway. We'll get to that very shortly. But the point is that it's too abstract for you to be able to think like, oh, I can press X here and something happens. That being said, hopefully that little piece of advice can help you guys out in that. Once your meters are filled, all active player boards will connect, and any gaps in between lines will be plugged up by blocks found above it. The meter then turns into a timer that counts down, letting you know how much time you've got to form new lines. The gameplay during this connected mode slightly changes as well. Because it combines multiple boards, it can seem a bit harder to make lines because of how long one line needs to be. But in reality, it's actually really fun to work with other players to accomplish this, and it's really interesting to watch how other players utilize the same blocks in their own way. One big strategy I've seen so far is that prior to connecting the boards, some players stack blocks unnecessarily since the gaps will be plugged up eventually, and when all the boards are connected, the blocks just fall in place. In order to manage the chaos of having 3 people working on the same board, each player is given alternating turns to put their blocks down. Now, this is actually very interesting because you can see where other players intend to place their blocks, and you can plan things out based on where they preemptively placed their pieces. In addition to this, there is also a special purple block whose blocks will be subject to gravity. For example, if you have an L block and you place it down with a narrower piece on top like a roof, the hanging block will fall. This is especially useful when you need to plug something up but you don't have like a straight piece or anything like that. Once you defeat the boss, all the players will move on to the next one, finding a total of 3 bosses per area. Fallen players are unfortunately not revived in between boss fights, so if you're still fallen, you'll still have to contend with the same revive mechanic that I described earlier. After clearing the entire area, players have a choice to continue on to a harder difficulty level or to exit. Now, this one is a little bit annoying, because if any player exits, they'll be replaced with a totally inadequate AI. In fact, if any player exits while a game is in session, they too will be replaced with AI and existing players won't be notified. What this usually does is that it prompts the entire party that was doing quite well up to that point to disband, which is really a shame because I've been paired up with some amazing players. I think one really good option that they could have done in this mode is to allow players to have an option to join mid-game to help other people out. Almost like the game Journey in a way, where another player gets paired up with you and you may or may not know who they are, but it's just great that a real person is helping you out. But outside of these little gripes though, I absolutely loved the connected mode in Tetris Effect Connected. And again, I've been waiting for this mode to come out on PlayStation since this update and the full game got released on Xbox last year. And I gotta say, I'm having a blast with this, and I encourage anyone who has Tetris Effect to reinstall the game and download the update, because Tetris Effect Connected is free for anyone who has the original Tetris Effect installed. And maybe, if you're good enough, you can try out the Connected Versus mode that unlocks every other weekend. I'm not really sure the schedule, where it pits 3 players against 1 player. I'm totally afraid of that because I'm not that good, but hey, if that opens up, I might just try that out as well, just for the hell of it. For anybody who is curious about Tetris Effect, you can check out my review of the game that I made a couple of years ago on the link in the description or in the card shown. And of course, if you liked this video and maybe have some questions about it, please let me know in the comments below. And naturally, for any sort of JRPG news, Japanese news, niche games, and more, please consider subscribing to the channel. At any rate, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.